Mr. Roberts, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? First of all, I would like to say thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to you about issues that are pertinent to our community. I am deeply honored and privileged to be here with you and the esteemed panelists, all of whom I've had some experience with, so you've definitely chosen well. I want to share with you the concerns about what's going on from the people perspective in Miami-Dade County. One of the issues that we have is definitely an economic issue. So you had a lot of essential workers, people who worked in restaurants, people who worked on the front lines, who were one paycheck away from being homeless. That exists, but now there are multiple paychecks without being able to pay for housing. So this is a major issue for us. Thank you. We're thankful for the moratoriums that have been put in place to help people to stay in their homes while they're there. But we know that there's going to become a day of reckoning when all of those past due bills are due. And so I'm wanting to hear what's the plan to address those issues for those folks who are in that situation, whose children are dependent on them to have, the shelter and housing and to be fed. We're very grateful as well for the food sharing programs, because most of these folks who are not bringing in any income could not feed their families had it not been for the food sharing programs. So we're grateful for that. We want to hear about the plans for those types of things as well. In addition to economics, in terms of the families, there's also the business component to it. And so for years, you'd hear people saying that we'd love to have a seat at the table, or we would love to be invited to the party. I just was on a Zoom last night, and a gentleman mentioned that it's not enough just to be invited to the party. We have to be asked to dance as well. So I would love to see what that looks like in terms of how we participating, not just at sitting at the table or going to the party, but how are we being interactive in terms of our dance. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to lead by example by making sure that in your campaign, you're hiring Black vendors. Every state, every city, every county, make sure that there's a commitment and budgetary items where you will be hiring Black vendors. Black people hire Black people. If you do that, you will pass on those dollars, those resources, where those families who are in need can definitely benefit from. So that's something I would encourage you guys to do. The other thing, I think that there's a missing element that's not been spoken of a lot. We're almost 200,000 deaths. So all of us in some way, due to COVID-related deaths, have been impacted by COVID. And so one of the things that we're really not talking about is the PTSD and the mental health piece. And so the federal government has deeply cut mental health programs and things of that nature. And one of the things that we need to look at is how do we address these issues for the parents who are stressed out and full of anxiety because they don't know what tomorrow holds. They don't know how long this is going to last. Parents who want to send their kids to college, parents who want to send their kids to school, parents who don't know how they're going to make ends meet going on in the future. Those mental health issues are real. We have to address those issues, not only from the parental standpoint or the community standpoint, but for the workforce standpoint as well. People are going to be asking folks to come to work as normal without even addressing or having anything in place for them to process what they've experienced in terms of a loss of a loved one, a significant person in your family, loss of property, loss of whatever it is that you've lost. how to deal with the anxiety. Our workforce, our educational system is going to be deeply impacted by those mental health issues that we definitely need to address. And so I encourage you to have some sort of answer for that, because we don't know when this end is going to happen, and the uncertainty is real. I was pleased to hear about the programs that you have in place about higher education and making sure the first 2 years of college is free. I'd like to see you come up with a plan, too, to forgive student loans for those who've been out of school for a while but struggle, because you have a segment of the population who can't even purchase their first home. They have a nice job, but they're so indebted in terms of their student loans, they can't even purchase their first home. So we need to make a way for those folks to be able to pay into the system through their taxes by paying for those homes, and we need to have some sort of forgiveness on that. The other thing I heard that you mentioned I thought was so very important. We need to save our HBCU. We are with one of the best presidents of an HBCU right here today, and this institution has grown by leaps and bounds under his leadership, and it will continue to grow, I'm certain. But not only do we need for those dollars available for students, but we need also developmental dollars so that they can build more dormitories, they can build more facilities for their students. We also need, in addition to those research dollars that you spoke of, we need dollars that are coming from SAMHSA and NIDA, where they are intentionally reaching out to HBCUs. Black people in the areas of behavioral health and sciences are the most researched people in the world. And so who better to lead those research than an HBCU? So in addition to those dollars, as you give dollars to NIDA, SAMHSA, and such, CSAP, those dollars should be, some of those dollars should be earmarked where they're going to be working with an HBCU. I would love to see under your administration that you develop a council with these HBCU presidents and work with them to help them to get more involved in research and to get more involved into having evidence-based programming or studies at their institutions. The challenge is you can't afford to have the latest information because you're just on a shoestring budget. So we need to resolve that issue as much as possible. And finally, social justice. Well, social justice and housing. Social justice. I know there's not much you can do in terms of helping to solve the problem of people who have hatred in their heart, to see other people who may be different from them as human. And that's a major problem that we have right now. The basic feeling of, or the basic of being recognized as human. I often say when they see us as human, they'll treat us as human. And I think that since the advent of George Floyd and so many other incidents that we've seen, which shows that they're not shying away from this, the violence. In your state, there's still hangings that are unsolved. I mean, and lynchings that are unsolved that happened recently. So I want to say this, in terms of police reform, in terms of anyone that does business with the federal government, if they are hate-based or hate-related, they should not be eligible to do business with them. We need tracking systems in place for those rogue officers. I believe that the majority of our police officers are doing well, but those that 1 or 2% or whatever the percentage is, that have a disregard for life, liberty, people of different background, black people or people of color, those people need to have their law license revoked. The process is there for that to happen on state levels, but it's not followed. And I think that the federal government should intervene on that level as well to make sure that whenever you have an officer that is charged with these heinous crimes, that their due process is followed all the way up into looking at not only getting them prosecuted, but making sure that they're not able to serve in that role of someone who was sworn to protect and serve, because they don't have that honor, and so they should not be in that position. And finally, housing. We've been priced out here in South Florida. You have a workforce, you have a labor force that can't afford to live within 20 miles of where they work. And so people have to travel, commute from one county to the next in order for them to survive, where rents and mortgages may be a little bit cheaper. Federal government programs, like you said, the down payment assistance programs, but not only that, we need to find some other way of assisting different local municipalities or counties to ensure that there are places for low-income housing in cities like Miami. The issue that we've had, and we continue to have, is that wages have stayed stagnant for over 30, 40 years. If you look at what a teacher makes now coming out of college today versus where they were making coming out of college 30 years ago, you may see a very small incremental growth. But at the same time, the cost of living and the cost of everything else has grown exponentially. And so these are the challenges that we face. And this is something that we really need to look into and see how we can resolve these issues with stagnant wages and the ever-increasing cost of everything else that we need to have. Those are the questions that I have and comments. And also, again, I think that you are such a great role model for my niece. I don't have a daughter, but I have nieces. I am from the Bahamas. My mother's American. So for all of the Caribbean, all of the diaspora, we definitely appreciate you and what you represent and what you bring to this ticket. And we encourage you to continue to do the good work and be that shining star that you've shown yourself to be. I've seen you in those Senate hearings, and I mean, you made me proud every time. So I'm going to continue to encourage you to do the same, and I'm looking forward to what's happening after November. I'm looking forward for what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for all that you have highlighted. There's a lot there. I'm not going to attempt at this moment to unpack it all, but I've taken extensive notes, and I look forward to us continuing this conversation and following up, because not only have you identified the problems, but you also are offering great ideas for solutions. So I want to make sure that I follow up with you.